Soundstripe.
But you know, someone invested in money.
Soundstripe. 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 Soundstripe.
Another episode of the BootzToSuitzPodcast. Today we got the man, the myth, the legend, my boy Mike. You know, he brands himself on being the average Joe, but it's nothing average about Mike. What do you say about that, Corey?
Nah, there's nothing average about Mike. Mike done came a long way. We follow him. We big fans, and we blessed to have you come and help us out on our first episode. And it's a blessing. So thanks for the flowers, and looking forward to getting some information from you and making us smarter.
So, Mike, tell me something. How would you introduce yourself to a brand new person, first time meeting you? Because you can't use the lieutenant commander anymore. So how do you introduce yourself now, brother?
Hey, how's it going, guys? First of all, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And to be your first, it really is an honor. So I just want to say thank you. Well, now I'd introduce myself as Mr. Mike Cavaggioni. But no, hey, I would tell them straight up what it is. Like, I'm retired from the Navy. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a financial coach. I'm a podcast host. And I love every single one of those things that I do. And I'm happy to talk about any of that with anybody that I'm introduced to. And happy to go into depth with anything that you guys would like to talk about today.
Right. Well, yeah, it's definitely an honor, and a lot of things that CJ and I, we definitely relate to is real estate and the investing thing. And I think that's really important, being in the military, having to plan, because one day we do have to take off those boots. And like you and CJ just did here, you guys, and thank you both of you for your service. And now we're at the point where we're transitioning new chapters. So what made you interested in finance, and how did that relate to you? Why you in the military? How did that come about?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks. Great question, by the way. So for me, my passion for finance really started, I would say probably around my 13, 14-year mark in the Navy. Actually, it might have been 15, 16-year mark. It's when I was at Naval Special Warfare Group 10. I went to this thing that they had called a resiliency retreat, where we got to, go out and just, the whole family goes, and it's just a really good thing to kind of keep the family together, build that resiliency, right? And they had this seminar, this thrift savings plan and personal finance seminar. So I said, hey, let's go check this out. We need to get on top of this stuff, right? So we go to the seminar. And, I don't think I've actually shared this with anybody yet. But yeah, so we go to this seminar, and that's when I realized I'm an idiot when it comes to my thrift savings plan. And the whole time that I was in the Navy, it's just been going into the G fund and just sitting there and doing absolutely nothing for us. So I learned that I need to change that up. So I did. I also learned that as I, go up in rank in the military, that I'm going to hit these different tax brackets, and I can actually use my thrift savings plan to offset my income to put myself back into a lower tax bracket, which I started doing that as well, which was really nice. So I kept myself pretty much in the 12% bracket my entire time that I've been
Wow.
in. I would make more, I would put more in, or just adjust the way I need to, depending on what I could or could not deduct. But at that time, I wasn't investing in real estate yet, right? I had just short sold a property that I was an accidental landlord on, and that's one of the reasons why I had to get my finances together. So that was kind of one of the things that kind of kickstarted that whole thing for me.
Wow, that's amazing. And, and it's funny because we a lot of time in the military, you just you get that paycheck and you don't really understand what to do with it. And if you're not being mentored by the right people, you will find yourself living payday to payday. So to hear your story, and especially at the 14-year mark, and to where you made it to be successful and actually mentor and coach people today, that's amazing. So I do appreciate that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man. And I only got into actual real estate investing about 2.5 years ago. So that's, even newer. So
Wow. Okay.
Do you find it hard, doing your real estate investing? I mean, you was in the military at the time, so how was you able to balance that out as a naval officer and a, real estate investor?
yeah, Corey, that's a great question. I still ask myself that to this day, right? It is difficult, right? But whenever I felt like there was a challenge that I couldn't do, I was like, you know what, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a way to make this happen, and I did. I found a way to invest passively. My first go at it when I was, I bought a duplex out in Chesapeake, Virginia, and that was really tough to deal with, especially like I closed on it like right before the pandemic happened. Then the pandemic happened, and it was like the end of the world. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't fly out there. I can't do anything. So I wound up selling that property for a profit a year later, and it cash flowed for the entire year that I had it. However, I said, let me look at something that I can do a little bit more passively. And I got into multifamily real estate and started investing passively as a limited partner. And I'm like, I can do this while I'm still on active duty. And it's a lot more hands off for me. I just need to, make sure I really understand the operators, these general partners, and seeing what they're doing, have a good understanding of what they're doing, have a good understanding of the market that these assets that they're going after are in, and just have a just broad understanding of how a real estate syndication works. Once I got myself really comfortable with that, and this took honestly, it took a year before I was even comfortable enough to say, okay, I'm going to, invest in my first syndication. I was working with these guys for a year, and eventually, finally got into it, and it was one of the best things ever. I mean, I was able to invest right away, right off the bat, on 102 doors, and it was it was almost the same process as when I went to go buy the duplex back in Chesapeake. As a matter of fact, it was a lot less paperwork, for
Wow.
one. For two, I had this team pretty much doing all the work. I'm just providing capital. I almost felt like I was just lending them my money,
Hmm.
and I'm getting a return on my investment, right? But it's more than that because I get the tax benefits of being an owner of this asset, and that's one of the things that's amazing. When I went to file my taxes, after I had my first syndication done, and I got that K1 back, and it showed I took like an 80% loss. Man, that was nice to claim on my taxes because here I was thinking I was going to owe all this money. I pretty much wound up owing almost nothing. I paid a little bit, and then all of a sudden I got a letter from the IRS a couple months later saying that I got audited for that return and that they owed me money. And
Hmm.
I'm like, okay. And I
Perfect.
got an extra check for $2,600. So I was like, okay, this works. So the big thing is, I would say that it's the limiting beliefs that you have to get past. You could be active duty and do this. You could be active duty and be a really active real estate investor. I know young E4s right now that are doing this. There's this one guy in the Marines that was recently on Bigger Pockets talking about his story. That guy is killing it. He is
Hmm.
killing the game.
Hmm.
Garcia, I know you invest in a lot of single family properties back on the mainland, right? And you're still doing this while you're on active duty. So, for the folks that are still active and they're like, man, I just don't know if I can do this. 100% you can. Get rid of those limiting beliefs, smash through that barrier, and break down borders.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's one of the things. One thing like you and I have in common, do some coaching and consulting, and one of the beginning stages of our programs, I think you and I both talk about mindset and limiting beliefs, because when you venture out into something new like investing, real estate, or what have you, or becoming a business owner, you find yourself with those negative beliefs, those limiting beliefs of like what if and everything else. And you got to understand just to make that jump. And it was hard for you, it was hard for Corey and myself to even see like that. But the fruits of that labor change lives. And that's what I appreciate by being in a circle of great individuals and professionals and business owners, entrepreneurs like you and Corey and all the others that we're going to talk about on this podcast, that it really makes it exciting to hear the stories. So I want to ask you, Mike, so when you're talking to a potential client in your coaching side, and especially with your podcast mastermind, I want to definitely touch back on that in a few minutes. What are some of the things you share with them to overcome that mindset and those limiting beliefs?
First of all, I share with them my own personal story. My background, how I grew up. I joined the military to get out of where I lived at on Long Island, New York, and just wanted to change something in my life. Right, I was always seeking out this change in my life. I wanted to do something better, bigger, and better, and that's what I always kind of sought out to do. Right, and I still continuously seek out to do that. Right. But the thing is, like most of the clients that I work with, at the very beginning, a lot of them are in financial extremis, right? And the biggest thing they need right now is that slap to reality. Like, hey, look, stop, focusing on this nonsense. Let's take a look at everything you have going on and take a step back, take a deep breath, okay? And then we start putting a plan together to kind of beat it. But that is probably the number one thing, like you had mentioned, Garcia, is that the limiting beliefs that people place on themselves is unbelievable. But we all do it. We all do it. I still suffer with imposter syndrome. A lot of people I know do. And it's one of those things that you have to overcome. So the first thing you need to change is mindset, right? And I talk to them about my four pillars of building wealth. Okay, so once you can kind of get that mindset piece down, then you start tackling these four pillars, right? And that's going to be education is the first one, mentorship and coaching is the second one,
Definitely.
networking and relationships is the third one, and then those three don't matter, right? If you don't do the fourth one, which is taking action. And if you want, we can go into those if you'd like, but that's kind of how I like to gear my sessions and work people towards those goals.
Right, right. So the coaching and mentorship. So for you, how did you find it uncomfortable? You know, pursuing a coach, or who were some of your mentors?
Yeah, so I actually have coaches as well. I was on a call with one of my coaches earlier today, my real estate coach, and had to have a kind of like that touch to reality where she's like, "Hey, you need to be doing A, B, C, and D to have to get these results that you're looking for." And a lot of times you need that reality check. I need it too, right? So for me, I mean, that's what I pay for, right?
Mhm.
And it's that accountability, right? And that's why I like coaches, but mentors are great too. You have to have good mentors in your life, right? But a mentor isn't someone you're going to pay. A mentor is someone that you're going to look up to. You're going to strive to be like them. And I surround myself with people that I consider mentors on a day-to-day basis. When I go to these real estate meetups, when I go to these conferences, it's great to be able to pick the minds of some of these folks that have gone before me and have done even better things. And it's one of the things I talk about too with both on my podcast and also with my clients is like when you go to these meetups and you're out there, you're networking. It's great to go talk to that salty person that's been doing this for 20 plus years,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
it's even better to go talk to the person that started last year or the year before because they're going to be the ones that have the freshest information for you. The person that started it 20 years ago, I mean, it was a whole different program when they did it, right? The real estate market looked different, or whatever investing platform they were using in the past was different when they started versus what people are doing today. So I think the piece of that is be careful who you pick as your mentor and who you pick as your coach, right? Um, you're going to want to find somebody that's kind of like down to reality and at the level where you need them to be at, not somebody that's like massively years and years and years ahead of you.
Right. And it's a stair step approach. And when entrepreneurs and business owners realize that when they have the coaching, they look at the scoreboard of their mentor or their coach, but they really don't need to focus on that. It's a milestone. It's a slow, steady pace. And the return of investment is actually by the speed of implementation. So, when they understand that, and like one of your pillars of action, when they do that, they'll see that. They'll see their returns.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, words are just words.
Yep.
Words are just words, and they mean nothing without action. So you got to put action behind your words.
Now, one good accolade, you were able to be a speaker, like keynote speaker on a recent, I think it was last year, for a conference. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, earlier this year, back in March, actually, I was in Phoenix at the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference. I got invited to speak there, and that's something that I got through my podcast, which is really awesome. And I'm going to go speak at it again next year. I was invited to come back, so I'm looking forward to that. It was a different experience for me, right? To get up in front of a room of people and give a presentation like that versus doing it on my podcast where it's just me in front of the camera with my guest, right? It's a lot different, right? Now, mind you, I have plenty of experience doing that thanks to the Navy, right? Thanks to 20 years in the Navy, I've given plenty of training presentations and things like that. So I'm not worried or nervous or anything like that. It was more of a, hey, I just want to make sure I'm not up here looking stupid, right? So I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about and that people aren't going to be like, well, hey, you said this, but it really means this, So it's important that you understand what you're talking about and you're not just going up there and trying to wing some type of presentation. Really, really immerse yourself in what it is that you're doing, and make yourself an expert. I mean, I will never call myself an expert in real estate or in finances or anything. I just know how to um, immerse myself and absorb the content that I need to absorb to know what I need to know and make myself dangerous, right? But I would never consider myself an expert. There's so many people. There's always somebody out there that knows more than you, that's doing more than you, that's doing better than you. But you can't sit here and be envious or jealous or anything like that because it's the thief of joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Focus on yourself. Focus on what you're trying to do and make sure you learn everything that you need to know to make yourself better.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
That's great.
Well, definitely nothing. The eagerness might make you hungry. So whatever puts you in beast mode to me, right?
Yeah.
Looking at you, and I'm like, he owns 5 properties. He's 26 and worth $5 million in assets. To me, that's my motivation. I might be envious of you, but it might make me stronger. So I think. For me, I just feel like everybody's mentor would be different. It's whoever you could relate to that that will motivate you to do what you need to do. It's just like listening to your podcast. I can listen to yours. I can listen to so many, but it was something about yours that made me want to keep focusing on it. I was relatable, right? Military. I'm from New York. You from Long Island. Wow. Where we came from. So. That's what we want to try to tap in on, and want people to know that you can do it. I always felt like, as far as real estate, Navy for one has the best real estate, period. Like nobody can say any deniability as far as basis. So
I know, right? We got all the waterfront property. Let's go.
Waterfront properties, right? And so where else, where your job is going to send you to the best real estate in the world for you to live, learn it, and you don't execute and buy a house wherever you go. I learned late, and I tell my sailors, now, like you said, somebody that's young and just starting out that's already buying properties, get a property everywhere you go. If you in Norfolk, buy a property in Norfolk. You go to California, buy a property in California. By the time you're done with your 20 years, you own probably about 4 or 5 properties, and you've been doing well, and you probably could retire for real.
Yeah.
At 38,
Yeah,
39.
I mean, you're at that point, you'll have a net worth of over $1 million, probably, and then some,
And
Yeah.
then
right? It's amazing. I I tell myself that and I'm pretty sure everybody that's senior in the military or they've been in for a while tells himself, "I wish I would have started when I was younger,"
Yeah.
or "I wish I would have started this when I was at E3 or whatever." It's facts, man. It's facts. That's what everybody says. So my my focus, one of the reasons why I started this podcast is to focus on younger people,
Mhm.
right? And I do have a large audience of the military, that's in the military that listens to my podcast. So I think that's fantastic. But also people outside of the military that listen to it. So I want to focus on the younger generation. I want to focus on them because they can get to the point where they're my age and they could just walk away from everything and be done, right? I was able to build what I built in just 2.5 years, and there's so much more
imagine
I
if
could
you
have done if I would
when
have
you
did it
yeah.
5, 10,
Yeah.
12, 15 years ago, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
get in
And
early
great.
and what's that?
I say, yeah, that's great, and that's what a lot of times we don't even realize if we could go back and change the whole way we did things, we'll be in a way better situation. But appreciate how you're sitting here and putting these service members in a better position with your expertise and your experience.
Yeah, 100%. It was one of my focus points during my last 2 tours in the Navy was, how do I mentor some of these young sailors to focus on the right things to that, hey, look, while of course I want, retention in the Navy as an officer, right? That was my biggest thing is I want to try to keep all the good sailors in, right? But at the same time, like I need to be preparing you for life outside the Navy because it's going to happen eventually, whether you want it to happen or not. So you could say, I'm going to stay in until they kick me out. That's great. Well, guess what? Eventually you're going to get kicked out because you can only stay so long. So
Mhm.
there is life outside of the military. And, you should be prepping for that from day one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So let me ask you a question, Mike. So you mentioned some about the conference and everything that you found you got connected that through your podcast. Can give us a little detail how you got into podcasting? What has it done for your business, your multiple businesses, and where do you foresee that going? How far you want to go with that?
Yeah. So as of today, I'm stopping my podcast. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So the podcast, it's funny because I started this all as a blog, right? I started Average Joe Finances to talk about my own personal finance journey in getting out of debt. Because before I came out here to Hawaii, I knew my wife and I talked about like we need to get ourselves 100% out of debt, like completely consumer debt free, like no credit cards, no loans. I had $28,000 in credit card debt. I had multiple personal loans. And during a 2-year period, we paid all that off and we saved up to $40,000 in the bank before we came out here to Hawaii. Um, so that for me was like, hey, I want to document this. I want to help other people. I want to show them what I did, right? So I started the blog, and then a buddy of mine who had some big life changes happen to him started a podcast about life changes and resiliency and things like that. And he was doing quite well. And he told me, he's like, hey, Mike, he's like, you should do a podcast talking about what you're talking about on your blog because you'd probably have a larger reach and be able to help more people. And I was like, maybe when I get out of the Navy, I just don't feel like I have the time right now. Again, limiting belief, right? So he's like, look, if you just do one a month, just do it. Trust me, just do. He's like, podcasting's getting big. It's gonna be a big thing in the future. Do it. Get in. I was like, all right, fine, twist my arm. I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I want to do one episode a week. And that's what I committed myself to. And oh boy, did I not realize how much work it takes to put a podcast together, from the recording the content, getting guests on the show, asking the right questions, making sure that it's a decent interview,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where I can actually use that footage to publish it and make it good, right? Like you guys probably can't even use this crap that I'm giving you. No, I'm kidding. I know it's all gold, but but no, it's like when you piece all this together, it got very difficult, and I was putting in like 8 hours a week of just editing.
Yeah.
And it was because I was like a perfectionist, and I said, I can't. I was getting burnt out very quickly, so I
Right.
actually learned to start outsourcing. And I started outsourcing the editing, and that's when everything changed. I started getting more downloads. because I was able to focus more on my social media and really sharing this and getting it out there. Um, and that's where I started getting the, again, more downloads, more people following me and seeing what I was doing. More people now asking me to come on my show instead of me trying to go out and find guests.
Mhm.
Once that shift happened, it was amazing. And now it's to the point where it's overwhelming, and I have to have my VA actually take care of all that. She handles all the booking and everything for me because it's too much. I mean, I get a lot of emails every day of people saying, "Oh, I want to come on the show. I want to come on the show." So I have her vet them, and then get the ones that are a good fit scheduled. There's a lot of people that we have to say no to. It's a good problem to have, right?
Yes.
But the podcast itself, now I kind of went down a rabbit hole there, but the podcast itself has opened up so many opportunities for me. One, with my business as a personal finance coach, also as a real estate agent, I've gotten leads through my podcast. Right, I've gotten leads for my coaching business through my podcast. I've gotten real estate deals through my podcast. And now I have this whole network that was built around my podcast, which is absolutely amazing. I have an email list of over 2,200 people, all from my podcast list, right? Or just for my podcast in general.
Wow.
So stuff like that, you can't beat that. I mean, it's just the networking opportunity that it gave me is probably the biggest benefit that I've gotten to having a podcast, and why I tell everybody that is a real estate investor or just in the personal finance space in general, start a podcast. And even if you have like 2, 3, 4 listeners, whatever, it will eventually grow. But think about it this way. Like, I looked at it when I first started. I'm like, oh, I've got 20 people that listen to me this month. 20 people in a room is a full classroom.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's me sitting in front of a classroom and teaching people something. And when I started looking at it that way, I said, okay, this is worth it. I'm actually affecting people. And then the first time somebody reached out to me on social media and said, "Hey, Mike, your interview with so and so, man, you got so much good information that came out in this episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you." Or, "Hey, I want to start doing A, B, C, or D because I heard so and so on your show talking about that." When somebody sends that to me, that means more to me than a review that somebody leaves me on Apple, podcasts, whatever. That's great. I appreciate that. But when somebody actually personally reaches out to me and says, "Hey, this touched me," that means more to me than anything else.
And that's huge. You and I have we talk all the time, and we have multiple great conversation on so many things. And when I mentioned the idea that I was thinking about a podcast, you just really it's like, hey, let's do it. So, and that's why we're here today. So, and I definitely know what you mean about that network, because if you think about it, we have so many individuals that's in uniform that we are around them and see them on multiple tours for over 20 years and never knew they had a business, never knew they have a thriving business like yourself, and so much knowledge on like investing and real estate and, just the gambit of things of going on that people either they've developed a skill or they've had the expertise or experience or just got trained throughout family generations. And that's the whole goal. And I appreciate everything you're doing, man. So let me ask you a question. So where do you see yourself in the next like the 5 years that will be able to? What's next for you, and how's that going to help you? What's your vision for your community?
Yeah, that's great. So, I actually plan my life in 5-year increments, right? And you're putting me on the spot here with that question, so I appreciate it because lately I've been kind of slacking there. Like, it was funny when I hit the point when I came out here to Hawaii and I said, I was within that 5-year window of retiring. I'm like, okay, here's what we got to do, right, to make this happen. And then as it got closer and that became the focus, I said, okay, cool, here we go. Now I look at myself 5 years from now, where do I want to be? And honestly, it's like it's at a mixing point of whether I want to be fully retired and walked away from everything at that point, or I'm still going to be pushing, with my businesses. And I've got something else I'm working on right now that I'm getting ready to start up here in a couple months. And I think it has the potential to
You want
be.
to share? You want to share? Go ahead, tare us.
Oh, no,
Let
no,
the
not going
world
to
know.
share right now. Not going to share
Okay.
right now, but it's something that could be potentially very big.
Okay.
And this might be something that can fully retire me 100%, because it might be something that I turn into a franchise in the future if it works out. So that's about as much of it as I'll give you right now for that. But 5 years from now, I see myself still doing what I'm doing because I love what I'm doing. Um, who knows? Maybe it'll be just the podcast then, because I'll be passively investing in everything else and just kind of riding it out and sharing stories.
That is awesome. That is awesome, brother. And and I would look back, and when we have you on the show again, um, 5 years from now, definitely see all those things go across. So, uh, what inspirational words or wisdom or nuggets can you share with our audience today and your fans on how can they get on their path to success like you?
Honestly, words of wisdom, I would say, you know, go out and follow content creators that are in the niche that you are particularly passionate about. Go listen to podcasts about things that you're interested in. Go on YouTube and watch videos on those same things that you're interested in and become a content sponge. Absorb as much of it as you can, right? Get into the books, get into the audiobooks if that's what you prefer, that's fine. For me, I love audiobooks, I love YouTube videos, I love podcasts, but when I actually sit down and read a book, I actually absorb it a little bit better.
Yeah.
So sometimes I will sit down and read a book. I don't read books often, but when I do, I've got a little list of them behind me of some really good ones. Um, but that to me, I think is super important. And speaking of books, if you want to read some books that are going to really help you with your mindset piece, because this is the first thing you need to change in your life, then go read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then my favorite book, my favorite personal finance book, even more than that, is The Richest Man in Babylon. Go read those two books, and it will really set you on that path. And then there's so many more that you
Yeah.
should read. But like I said before, my words of wisdom would be: become a content sponge in the things that you're interested in and passionate about.
Awesome.
And that's where our podcast come in at. We call it Boots to Business. I also, was on the fence about boots and business because we also, besides focusing on your military transition to your civilian transition, the suits, I also wanted to focus. I want to focus on what you can do while you're in the military, right? So boots and business. So that's what the content that we're trying to push out and want. That's our passion, right? Because we're doing it because we kind of did it the hard way and try to make things a little easier, like what you're doing with finances. The kids are smarter. I call them kids, but military, the junior guys, they're smarter. They're smarter when I came in. We kind of came in and I don't know if I want to go to college. These guys is coming in with master degrees and already
Yeah.
tuned into podcasts and listening. And I mean, you could be
Yep.
rich nowadays just by having a following. If you want to tap into it or you think you got something, you do it while you're in the military, right? You can
100%.
Google it. You Google it, you go on Instagram, anything. So I boost the business. That's what we want to do, and I really really appreciate all of the information you gave us today. It was enlightening. I learned something. I already read those books, but I hope whoever's listening go get those two books because they're insightful. And it'll definitely get your mind right to what you want to do and get you, in my case, it motivated me.
Right. So, Mike, how can the audience connect with you or follow or to tap in with you or set up a call with you?
Sure, I'll give you two websites. Keep it easy for you. One is www.mikecavaggioni.com. And then the other one is www.averagejoefinances.com. Go to any one of those websites. You'll be able to find me. You'll be able to find my social media. Definitely reach out, get in touch. You can schedule a call with me. I do free consultations as well. Happy to get on a phone call with anybody, kind of see where you're at and see if there's a way that I can help you or refer you out to somebody that can. But especially if you're looking at if you're in the military and you're looking to do something, man, I'd love to have that conversation with you. I love talking with young military folks, seeing what they're doing. A lot of times, a lot of them doing some really good things. They just need that little push to basically jump off the ledge and pull the cord, and just make it happen. So,
Yeah.
but there's so many Corey, like you said, man. Um, I love the premise of your show as well. The boots, the suits, but it's not just about transition, right? It's about the folks that are doing amazing things right now. Because I know you guys know some. I know some amazing people active duty right now that are
Yeah.
doing some just killer stuff.
Yes.
So I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I appreciate you guys inviting me on your show. I really do.
But thank you, Mike. Hey,
Definitely.
it's
Thank
been
you.
fun. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to having you on the show again. So look, go check out Mike. Average Joe, but he's not average.
He's not average. Not at all.
And we appreciate you again. So hey, we're out from Hawaii, and boots to suits.
Flowers to you, brother.
Soundstripe.